This particular session, we're going to really look mainly just at, kind of setting up classroom procedures, routines, talk a little bit about social emotional piece of that. And Doug's going to lead us through this session. But each time we come together, like next month, when we talk in October, Danny and Brenda will lead us, and we're going to talk about IEP development. We're going to talk about eligibility. We're going to talk about writing present levels, goals. We're going to talk about progress monitoring. Then in November, we're going to look at how we do establishing baseline, and then and what that looks like for goal writing, for math, reading, behavior. So any of those things you need in the meantime, we're happy to help you, and our contacts, let the directors in your districts know, or give us a contact, and we'll drop a link in the chat today before we leave with our contact information that'll link you to our emails. So if you have any questions or anything, we can support you along the way. December, we're going to work on progress monitoring. January, we're going to work on specially designed instruction. February, we're going to talk about transition, to getting our students ready for transition. In March, we'll talk about assessment and inclusion. We'll talk about in April, universal design for learning. And then in May, we're going to talk about least restricted environment. So I'm going to turn it over now to Doug, and Doug's going to just lead us through for today in our conversation around, classroom procedures, routines, and setting up structures for our students. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Doug.
So as Ms. Dion was saying, the title of our little talk or presentation today is going to be New and Emerging Teacher Cadre, and we're going to look at classroom practices and procedures. And then the information that I'm going to present came from the Midwest PBIS network, and it looks at not only just setting up routines and classroom practices. It looks at 6 classroom practices, and we'll briefly cover those. So a couple of things that I want you to think about while we're going through our little presentation is, what's one thing that we're going to take away from this presentation? So as we go through this, what make the list, or write down one thing that you may take away from this presentation that you may be able to implement into your classroom or into your school environment. And then what's reinforced or challenged your thinking about a classroom practice or procedure that we will be talking about. The first thing that we want to look at or think about is the physical environment of our classrooms. Look in your classroom and look around and make sure that the physical environment is arranged in such a way that the students can see and hear you, and can move freely and can engage in the lesson that you have going on. So some of the rationale for that is for arranging the classroom environment is it increases on-task behavior, plus it increases the perception of safety. And with some of the kids that we're working with, we've had been through some traumatic experiences or adverse childhood experiences. And so that perception of safety is a key thing in supporting these students when they come back to us and helping them feel safe in their environment. It also supports respect for others, and it allows for teacher movement and for teacher involvement as well. So when you're arranging your physical environment, look at some things that you want to think about is you want to keep high traffic areas free from congestion. And some of those areas could be like the lockers, the doorways in your classroom. Maybe you've got some cubbies where the kids all put their stuff up in the morning and they like to stand back there and talk. You want to keep those high traffic areas kind of free of congestion and keep that traffic moving smoothly through those areas. Make sure that all students can be easily seen and can easily see you as the teacher. And then one way that you may want to do that is go into your classroom, sit down on one of your students' seats, and just have a look around the room. Make sure that you can see, if the teacher's up front, make sure that I can see that teacher and I can see the other students in the classroom. And if you're helping one student or a group of students, make sure that you position yourself in a way that you can still observe and see all the other students. Another thing that you want to think about is the materials that are frequently used. If you have to hand out materials, or, in my case, I always had extra pencils and paper for my kids. If the student came to the class and they didn't have a pencil or didn't have a piece of paper, I had a basket right there by the door. They knew to pick up a piece of paper, pick up a pencil, No big deal made out of it. Don't sweat it. If that's all you got to worry about, then you got no problems at all. So just provide those kids with those frequently used supplies or needed supplies. Make sure they're labeled and in an area where they know where to get them and how to access them. And so this would be something that you would want to set up a procedure for. That procedure we'll talk briefly about then becomes a routine. And then when you're displaying materials like teaching materials or posters, or hopefully your rules and expectations are displayed in your classroom, and you've taught those and you've reviewed those and you've modeled those are displayed in a way that are relevant and in a way that the students can see those and they're current and up to date. The next thing we want to look at is the classroom teaching matrix. And this is not really a practice, but this is a way to assist in developing and including your expectations, rules, and routines and procedures. This teaching matrix provides for consistency among all adults in the classroom. So everyone's on the same page, they know what everyone else is doing, and they're working together to make the learning environment better for the students. Some of the components, or the three components of the classroom teaching matrix, are the expectations, rules and examples, and routines. With the expectations, we're trying to connect those 3 to 5 rules or expectations that you have in your classroom back to your school-wide expectations, such as being respectful, responsible, and safe. Those could be our big rocks or our large PBIS goals or expectations for the whole school setting. You want to apply those to the classroom setting as well. They suggest that they be the same, but you have to modify or adapt those school-wide expectations to meet your needs, depending upon the class arrangement, and if you're self-contained or if your students go into regular classrooms at times, so forth and so on. So your rules and examples should be observable, measurable, and positively stated. And there should be some examples be shown of what those rules and expectations look like. And then finally, the routines or procedures for the way that you are carrying out common activities or for ways of conducting business. What are the routines? What are the procedures? Or if a little Dougie comes in late, he was late to school, he gets stops by the office, lets him know he's here, then he comes on into the classroom. What does he do when he comes into the classroom? Where does he look to see what the assignments are? Or do we have a basket with materials that he has to pick up and we've handed out? Or what's the procedure for missing class and making up assignments? So you teach these procedures to your kids. You go over those procedures, what you want them to do and how you want them to respond or act in that situation. And then after you've taught those procedures, then they become a routine, something that's automatic, something that the kids know that I've missed yesterday. I need to get up with a peer to get my assignment, and then this is where I can pick up my assignment from. Or, I've seen routines, or I've seen procedures for a bathroom break where a young person get up, goes up, picks up a bathroom pass, shows it to the teacher, and goes to the restroom and comes back. Don't have to ask permission. They don't have to interrupt the flow of class or anything like that. Just that it's already a procedure that they know, they've been taught, they've practiced that, they've got feedback on how to do that, and it's become a routine, something that does not disrupt class. So the rationale for routines, it provides structure for students and helps them to engage with instructional tasks, and it helps teach rules and routines at the beginning of the year. Then sometimes after extended breaks, that when the kids come back, you have to reteach those rules. You have to review your expectations. You have to practice those routines or those procedures again over and over and over to remind them of, remember before break, this was the expectations, this is what that looked like. And so, yes, Ms. Dion.
I just wanted to say, Doug, I thought that was an excellent point that you made there about teaching the routines and the procedures and how we have to, like, after a long break. But even I was talking to a teacher just a couple of days ago about a first grade student who had was having some behavior issues, and we were talking about, you know, those procedures and routines and those things. But last year they probably spent a majority of that year on a virtual learning platform. So we were thinking, you know, that they kind of fall back into a routine. But if they spent their kindergarten year, for example, in a virtual setting, then they may not be, we may have, it would be a brand new learning for them. And so it was a real good conversation about making sure that we teach those routines and procedures and let them practice them and do them over and over. But I just thought that was a good point to think about, that just keeping in our mind that, you know, it's been some time before since kids have been in a classroom setting, if they've been in one before, if they're not new to coming to school, and how important that is right now. And probably we could talk a little bit about the social emotional piece of that and how important it is for kids to have that consistency and be that routine set up in that classroom too. But just, I wanted to share that about, we were talking about that first grade kid that was having a little trouble, probably a lot to do with they just haven't learned how to behave at school. And so that was something that the teacher was really working on modeling and going back and reteaching.
Yeah, and the, like you said, the SEL, or social emotional aspect of teaching those routines and those procedures, it provides for that like you said, consistency and that stability. They know what's expected from one moment to the next. They know how to carry out, you know, what is it that I've missed out on? How do I pick up on that? You know, so that the students already know what's expected of them, and they know what to do, and it provides for that stability, like you said, and that sometimes you as the teacher is the only constant thing within that kid's you know, environment. So you consistently implement your rules and expectations and carry them out. And it also clearly stating your expectations and rules and lends to the credibility of your authority as a teacher. You know, be consistent. That's one of the key things, is don't, you know, let a kid slide with one thing today and then tomorrow, you know, don't let that happen, but be consistent and stick to your rules and expectations.
You know, Doug, I saw just the other day, I was reading some things about the impact of social emotional learning and how that can really impact academics. And I saw a statistic that said that when you incorporate that into your classroom, that consistency, that organization, that reflection, that it improves student academic scores 11%. And so, you know, that's very, very important and very key as we seek to help our students overcome already some barriers that they have, maybe academically or from a social emotional standpoint.
Thank you. We look at active supervision. Active supervision is a proactive way of ensuring that the students that you're in charge of or the students that you work with are safe. And it helps to promote not only just their safety, but promotes their own task behaviors. It helps promote or build those relationships. And for me, that relationship building is one of the most important things you can do as far as working with students, because, you know, it doesn't matter how well behaved the student is. If you don't develop a relationship with that student, then you're not going to get the best that they have to offer. So build those relationships and encourage your students through those relationships. So some ways that you can, some simple ways to involve active supervision is just proximity, or just moving closer to the students and to the kids that you're working with. Provide them listening, listen to their conversations. I'm not saying interject or interrupt in every conversation that they're having, but listen to their conversations, listen to what's going on, listen to what they're talking about. And then when they do need to talk to you or do need to share something, use active listening. Pay attention to what's going on, sit up, you know, have an open posture, lean forward, make eye contact, and then respect what they're saying and respond to what they're saying. You know, look at what is the message behind the words? What are the emotions attached to the words that they're using? We attend to listening by our body language and our posture, but we attune to what's going on by listening to the emotions behind the words that are being said, by paying attention to their body language, by paying attention to their eyes, their facial expressions, things that they're going on. So when you're using active supervision, be up, moving about, listening to your students, making eye contact, smiling. I mean, a smile don't cost anything. For some kids, that may be the only smile they see. Give them a smile, use pleasant voice tone, use the students' names, and then express care and concern about what's going on with the students and what's going on in their life, along with just the affect, the way you carry yourself in a classroom setting or in the school environment impacts student behavior. So have that positive affect, be compassionate, but have that your body language, your presence show that you're confident in what you're doing, and you're confident in working with the young people that you're working with, and you're there to help them and to build those relationships. Some examples and non-examples of movement. Of course, some examples are definitely be up walking around. So you're scanning the classroom and walking around so that when you're monitoring students, that you can see those students from all areas of your classroom. I like the ones about the playground and the cafeteria and the gymnasium or whatever. I've been guilty of me and a couple of my teacher buddies. We'd get over in the corner and talk about what's going on with our life, and not really paying attention or not really monitoring the students. And one of them get hurt, and then the principal's like, "Well, what happened?" I don't know. So how are you going to cover you can't hardly say, "I don't know." Well, weren't you supervising? Well, yeah, I was sitting there talking to my buddy. Well, that's not really active supervision. Some non-examples are sitting or standing at your desk where you can't see, or the classroom, the students can't see you. Walking the same predictable route every time is a non-example of active supervision, because kiddos pay attention to what you're doing. And if they figure out that you walk around the corners at this certain time every day, well, they're going to do expected behaviors at that time. But as soon as you're out of sight, they're going to be getting into things that could cause problems. So, and don't stop and talk to one student for several minutes at a time. Like brief, casual, "Hey, how you doing? Glad to see you. Welcome back." Or, "Hope you have a wonderful day." Something like that's great. But if you want to have an extended conversation, you may want to set up an appointment or set up a time where you can devote that time to that one student or a group of students. But, keep moving. So encouraging appropriate behavior. A lot of times, all we see, this is a set of strategies that encourages our students to use appropriate behaviors, use what's expected of them. We communicate positive examples, give specific feedback, then motivate students with reinforcers. So sometimes when we're working with students, some of the students that we work with are kind of difficult to work with at times. And I was guilty of just seeing the negative things that the students were doing. And it took a long time to realize that if I encourage the positive and recognize that more than the negative, then I'm going to get that more than the negative experiences. So encouraging appropriate behavior, we want to teach the behavior and the routines that we want to see from our students. Just because we got a rule written down and a poster hanging on the wall does not mean that they understand what that rule is, or they know what that expected behavior is. So when you develop your rules and expectations, you already know that you have to go over those with your students, teach those to your students, model those behaviors, have those students practice those behaviors, practice those rules and expectations, give them immediate corrective feedback, positive corrective feedback, and then practice again, and then allow them to try that on their own. So it's I do, we do, and then you do. I do this behavior, I model this behavior for you, we do this behavior together, or we follow this rule or this example, walking down the hallway, for example. I show you how I want you to walk down the hallway. We do this as a group. We do this as a group several times just to make sure that we understand what that looks like. And then you do that independently. So teach those behaviors and those routines to your kids, because if you don't teach them to them, they're not going to know what's expected of them. Use preventative prompts. If you expect it, pre-correct it. If you expect something's going to go, so a transition may be difficult for your kiddos, give them a reminder, hallway expectations, right-hand side of the hall, hands to yourself quietly. Thank you. Have a great day. That don't take 5 seconds out of the end of your classroom before they're changing classes to use those prompts to remind them of those hallway procedures and to encourage them to use those expected behaviors. Another thing that you want to do is use behavior-specific praise. And using behavior-specific praise, we'll talk briefly about what that looks like, but I'll get into a little more detail with that. But behavior-specific praise is just what it says. What behavior am I being praised for? And how are you praising me? How do I know it's me that you're praising? And what is that behavior that I did? So when we're using behavior-specific praise, there's 5 little steps to that. And those 5 steps we'll get into in a couple minutes. Individual reinforcers are those things that students can earn to acknowledge that their positive expectations, are things that it says tokens, bucks, table points. If your school or your classroom has a token economy, a system where you have, they get stars or stickers, or you get so many marbles, you get a reward, or whatever it is you use throughout the day. Teach the kids what those reinforcers are. Teach them how they can earn those reinforcers or those tokens, and then how that they can trade them in at the end of the day, or so forth and so on. So if you come up with that system, you got to teach them that system and how to use those things, not just expect them to know how to do that. And group contingencies is just what it says. A reward for the whole class is contingent upon the whole group. And then once everyone gets the class earns so many points or tokens or whatever it is, everyone in the class gets to participate in that group contingency. You don't single kids out, because we all may need 5 stars before, at the end of the day, or a total of 25 stars, and I may only earn 3 while Miss Dion earned 8. Well, I'm still, those 3 stars I earned are just as valuable and as important and difficult to earn for me as they were for Miss Dion's 8. So, if it's a group contingency thing, include all kids in the reward. Don't single none out for, just because they had a slip up or 2. So when we're looking at behavior-specific praise, some of the ways that we can talk about behavior-specific praise is, first things, you want to identify the student or the group by name if it is a student, or by group if it is a group of kids. Then include a term of praise, and then describe or acknowledge the rule that they were following, and then link those to the school-wide expectations or your classroom expectations, and then provide them with the reinforcements. For example, Diane, awesome. You are demonstrate listening to the speaker. That's being respectful. And if we look at our rules and expectations, be respectful. Let me move me for a second. Is raise the hand, listen to the speaker, and follow directions. So Diane, we have the student's name. We have a term of praise. Awesome. Then what rule are we connecting her behavior to, and what was that behavior, and how did that show the expectation of being respectful? So, and some non-examples that we talked about were Dion is sitting in her seat. There was the student's names there and the behavior, but we don't have a term of praise, and we don't have it tied back to what was the rule or expectation that was being recognized or being followed. Like I said, saying good job without connecting it to a school rule, if kids don't know what you're praising them for, then how are they going to use that behavior again? And then giving a ticket without saying anything, just walk by and drop a token, or give them a ticket or something like that. The student don't know why they got that, So what behavior are you reinforcing? What behavior do I have to have again to earn another token? So make sure that you're providing them with the token and what it's connected to. So continuum of responses for inappropriate behaviors. And this continuum of responses is a way that we can respond to inappropriate behaviors without jumping straight to go to the office. You know, we're going to have a toolkit, as it says, and what are some tools in our toolkit that we can use to help with these inappropriate behaviors, or without jumping to the most restrictive thing that we can do. And so some of the things that we can look at is some of the least intrusive or least restrictive thing that we can use is planned ignore. If it's something that we can ignore, ignore. My pen clicking may not bother some people, but to some people, they cannot stand that. But if it's something that you can ignore, ignore that, or say, let me borrow your pen, please. Thank you. But if it's something you can ignore, ignore it. Then move into physical proximity. If I can move closer to the students and it helps calm that behavior, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to jump straight to, send them to out of the classroom for talking. You know, what are some things that I can do without calling that student out in front of their peers? I like using signals or nonverbal cues. That way you can allow those kids to check or to change their behavior without it saying anything to them, or without calling out their names in front of their peers. Because a lot of times we already know if I call our kids out in front of their peers, they just got to show off in front of their peers. So you get into that power struggle, and you're the one that loses. So what can I do? What kind of signal can I use without having to call them out in front of their peers? And then, as you can see, this continuum gets more intrusive or more restrictive as you go on. So always start with the least restrictive and work your way up. Oh, this is a great one. How many times has someone told you to calm down and immediately you calm down? Works every time. I know for you ladies it don't, but I can give you a little tidbit of information. It don't work for men either. So you tell me to calm down, yeah, I will immediately calm down. I know what's best for me. So, and some alternatives to saying calm down, you want to use I and we statements. I understand you're upset. What can we do to help you through this situation? You know, maybe provide them with some self-regulating strategies, like take a deep breath, or a mindful moment. You know, just sit quietly. Think of 5 things that you can hear in the classroom. What are 4 colors that you see? What are 3 things that you can smell? What are 2 things that you could touch? And what's 1 thing that you can taste? You know, and give them a moment to just process that, ask them that to help them reconnect and help them to, calm themselves. And see you're mad. How does that make your body feel? And when we're looking at social emotional learning, we have to learn these emotions and what impact they have on our bodies. So when our students are upset, if we can have them connect that feeling to their body responses, then they may be able to understand, my heart's beating faster, my hands are shaking, I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. What's something I can do to help calm this situation, help calm myself down without getting too worked up and without having a causing problems for everyone in the class? And then some other things that you want to, these alternatives that you use, you want to make sure that you validate your students' feelings and emotions. Because it's real to those students. And those are things that they need. I understand you're upset. I would be upset as well. What can we do to work through this? Instead of saying you don't have any reason to be upset. Well, that's silly. Validate those emotions. Let them know that those emotions are appropriate, and teach them ways to deal with those emotions and help them through those troubling times. And then if you help them through those troubling times, build those relationships, they'll come to you for the help and assistance on those times where they're not struggling, they're not going through a situation, but on just a daily one-on-one friendly basis. So engagement and opportunities to respond. There's a lot of research that talks about opportunities to respond and then engagement. So when we're looking at engagement, it gives maximizes involvement of all students. We don't just look at, one or two students in the classroom. How many times have we been in a class, or have we? I've been in the classroom myself, and I'd imagine Miss Dion, Miss Chastity have as well, Mr. Denny Paul as well, have just one or two kids that answer all the questions. They seem to know all the answers. They want to respond all the time. They want to take up all the teacher's attention. Well, if I'm in that classroom and Miss Dion and Miss Chastity's got all the answers, I'm going to sit back and do nothing. I'm just going to listen and go about my business. When you provide opportunities for all students to respond, then everyone's interacting, everyone's engaged, and it provides for more time involved in activities and less time that they're off task, and the less difficulties you'll have in that classroom. And some of those opportunities to respond are what are the whiteboards. You can use those. You can use some pre-printed materials with A, B, C, D, all right. So everyone hold up your letter of the answer that you think it is, yes, no, true, false. Use those materials like that are already available to you. So, and then just provide everyone with that response. What's it called, Miss Dion? A choral response, where everyone responds at the same time. And so, and that way all students are involved. And the more they're involved, the more they learn, and the more activities that you have, the more material that you cover, the more that you're able to get accomplished during that day or that school semester, week, year, whatever you want to say. So provide, and when it's a continual way of providing feedback to the teacher and to the students as well. So provide them with many opportunities and ways of responding. Don't just use, all right, everybody raise your hand if you know the answer. Give everyone an opportunity to be able to respond. And then here, like I said, here's some examples: response cards, whiteboards, signaling or movement activities: thumbs up, thumbs down, stand up, sit down, four corners. The four corners one's pretty cool. You ask them a question. If you think it's A, go to corner one. If it's B, corner two, then throughout the room. And that way you get students moving. And then once they get into the position, have them defend their answer or explain why they thought it was this corner versus another corner. So it's just a way to get kids up moving. And because they've sit for a long time, I get a little bored myself. So when you're talking about using these opportunities to respond, make sure that you teach the students how to use these whiteboards or response cards or signaling. Teach them when to select their card or what to write on it, or their response, when to share, when to clean boards, and so forth and so on. And you want them all sharing at the same time, because if I'm not sure about an answer, I'm going to look around and see what everyone else has got, and then I'm going to share what I think is the right answer. So make sure that it's a situation where, on 3, 1, 2, 3, everyone show me your answer. And then that way, it's just the way that all kids are interacting. Prepare questions to match your response options. So if I have a true false response, I'm not going to ask an open-ended question, because there's no way they can answer true false to an open-ended question. So your question should be paired with the responses that you're providing them. Provide students with clear, specific feedback, and then provide the correct answers and a brief explanation if a significant number of students get the question wrong. Provide them with the correct answer and provide them with the feedback and a quick explanation of why you got the answer that you got. And carefully plan, organize, and teach the use of all the materials that you're doing when you're doing opportunities to respond. One thing that you may take away from our little chat, and then think about something that's reinforced or challenged your thinking about classroom practices and procedures, and why is it important to implement those into the classroom? Why do we want to teach our procedures so that it becomes a routine? And then if you have any questions, please ask those or drop those in the chat as well. And I'll turn that back over to Miss Dion. This is our feedback form, just like our sign-in form. And Miss Dion. And then I'll
Sorry,
go on to the next slide here in a minute.
Okay.
Give them time to look at this.
So we had some folks talking about just answering your questions. One of the takeaways is helping students identify and regulate emotions. Another teacher said making sure that we tell the student why we told them good job, not just assume they know why they're saying that. And that's so good for that specific feedback. Being consistent with everything that you do so that students know your expectations. Another teacher says it's sometimes good to be reminded about the consistency in the classroom. With special education students, that consistency is key. Don't assume that the students know why they're being praised or corrected. And then another teacher says that they take away importance of routines, feedback, and why we're giving them feedback. So all of those are just phenomenal things that you share. Consistency. So Doug, those are all great things that we're taking away from today. Sometimes it's just good to go back and revisit. And even if you've been teaching for a while, it's just to go back and rethink it. And I think in light of where we're at now, kids coming back into school, you know, we have to think about just reorienting them and giving them those routines and practices and opportunities to remind them and to be kind, gentle reminders and to model and practice. Another teacher says they're going to use more trauma-informed statement alternatives for calming down. She has students with anxiety, and those types of questions will be great help. So that's a great takeaway, being consistent. And again, it's easy to kind of get distracted with lots of interruptions and things that we have going on during our school day. But I think we talked about the need for, you know, just talking about classrooms and procedures before we get into talking about due process, and that our focus next meeting is that we're going to talk about, we wanted to talk about just getting those routines and classroom procedures set up, engaging students. If you engage students, then less behavior. And I do want to say that I apologize. We went over about 5 minutes today, and that's probably because I took off a little longer just introducing everybody. So my apologies for that. We appreciate you. Hopefully we'll have much more engagement and much more opportunity to talk and have some discussions and small group planning activities and things like that. But we're so glad you're here with us. And Doug just thanked you all. And I want to pause right there. Is there anything else, Doug?
No, I'm good. Just thanks everyone for being here, and I just want to commend you on the terrific job that you're doing working with the students and providing those services to the young folks during this difficult times. I mean, you know, the folks that went through the virtual teaching and stuff last year is phenomenal on how quickly they adapted to doing that, you know, and so I'm just very impressed with you folks. And if there's anything that I can ever do to help you, please feel free to contact me. It's doug.smith@hazard.kyschools.us. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Doug. And thanks to each of you. And so we'll go ahead and conclude again. I'm sorry we went over about 5 or 6 minutes. So thank you all for being with us. Our next session will be on October 13th. We're going to talk about IEP development. We're going to share with you a coaching tool. We'll talk about present levels. We'll talk about goal writing and a lot more around the paperwork piece of special education. So thank you.